We want to tell you that this is a courtroom that is tightly run by Judge Lancito. We can only go to it electronically, that is on television, when he gives us the signal. We are now at the H hour, if you will. It is 1 o'clock Eastern Time. It is 10 a.m. Pacific Time in Los Angeles. O.J. Simpson is in a holding room just outside the courtroom. Judge Lancito will enter the courtroom. He will then, at that moment, have given the signal for the television coverage to begin. The jury will file in. We believe that the verdict will be read by a court reporter, and the court reporter will ask the jury foreman, a 50-year-old divorced black woman, whether in fact this represents the accurate judgment of this jury. There's a good possibility as well that the jurors will be polled individually. There is no chance that they could have changed their mind in the last 24 hours or so, according to the official verdict. But in fact, and we've seen these moments before, one of them may say, if they are polled individually, no, I have some second thoughts, and another uproar would develop. That seems to be highly unlikely. The camera in the courtroom is a small remote camera that is controlled by someone representing all of those of us who are showing you the pictures in the courtroom. It has been unplugged from time to time by Judge Lancito. Most recently, just last week, when he thought it was too close to the notes that O.J. Simpson was keeping, and that would be a violation of the attorney-client relationship that was going on during the sidebar conference, but then it was quickly reinstated. However, this trial does come out. There will be many debates around the country at universities, in legal circles, and in state legislatures and the Congress. Now let's go to the courtroom. The moment has arrived.
All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Kardashian, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Blazier. People are represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, and Mr. Hodgman. The jury is not present. Good morning, counsel.
Good morning.
All right, the record should reflect that earlier this morning at 9 o'clock, the court met informally with counsel here in the courtroom, because there are too many lawyers to go into chambers this morning, for the purposes of discussing notifications to the jurors regarding their rights of privacy and the interest of the news media to interview them or speak to them following the delivery of the verdict in court here today. The court distributed to the parties copies of the questionnaire that has been distributed to the jurors, and also the notice to them regarding confidentiality under 237 of the Code of Civil Procedure. And those two questionnaires have been returned by the jurors. They have uniformly indicated their desire that their private information will remain confidential. They have also indicated to the court unanimously a desire not to speak to the attorneys after the conclusion of the trial, and not to speak with the news media either. All right, counsel, is there anything else we need to take up before I invite the jurors to join us? All right, Deputy Trower, let's have the jurors, please.
There is nothing that we can say or do that would add to the suspense or to the drama of this moment. The jurors are being led back in, and just so they will not accidentally be shown on camera, the camera goes to the seal above Judge Lancito's high bench there in Department 103 of the Criminal Courts building. It's a relatively small courtroom. Most of the seats in the public area are taken up by representatives of the news media and the family, just a few seats for the public on a daily basis, and therefore television has been vitally important to share what has been going on with the community there and at large. Johnny Cochran has never been beaten by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. On the other hand, Chris Darden has won 19 murder cases in a row. And Marcia Clark is widely regarded as one of the most tenacious prosecutors in the country.
Please be seated. And the record should reflect that we have now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel and our alternates. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you, do you have the envelope with the sealed verdict forms, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, would you give those to Deputy Trower? And would you return those to our four-person juror number one? All right, Madam Foreperson, would you please open the envelope and check the condition of the verdict forms? All right, Madam Foreperson, you've had the opportunity to review the verdict forms.
Yes.
Are they the same forms that you signed, and are they in order?
Yes, they are.
All right, would you hand those, please, to Deputy Trower? And you have signed and dated those verdict forms indicating the jury's verdict?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen and the jury, I'm going to ask that you carefully listen to the verdicts as they are being read by the clerk, Mrs. Robertson. As after the verdicts have been read, you will be asked if these are your verdicts. And I would caution the audience during the course of the reading of these verdicts to remain calm, and that if there is any disruption during the reading of the verdicts, the bailiffs will have the obligation to remove any persons disrupting these proceedings. All right, Mrs. Robertson. All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least one crime of murder of the first degree and one or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this second day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? have it quiet in the courtroom, please. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
Hold the jury. Juror number 1, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 3, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 1, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 6, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 7, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 8, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 9, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 10, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 11, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Okay, count 2. Juror number 1, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 2, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 3, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 5, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 6, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 7, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 8, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 9, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 10, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 11, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 2, is this your verdict?
All right, the clerk is directed to record the verdicts as read. The parties agree to waive reading of the verdicts as recorded. Mr. Cochran, do you waive reading of the verdicts as recorded?
Yes, we do.
Ms. Clark, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to at this time take this opportunity to publicly thank you for the service that you've given to us. The burdens that we've placed upon you were enormous, and words can't begin to express the debt that we owe to you for the time and patience and exertion that you've given to us during the course of this case. I will have an opportunity to meet with you privately later, and I'll give you my private comments when we have a chance to meet. I want to caution you at this time that there is, as you know, intense media interest in this case. The news media will probably seek you out at your home or at your place of business. And I would implore that the news media act responsibly to avoid harassing you or identifying you without your consent or otherwise causing you concern. Whether you wish to cooperate with the news media is, of course, entirely up to you. However, I must warn you to expect the worst as far as that is concerned. We want to, I know I share with you in expressing our thanks to the bailiffs from the Sheriff's Department, to our court reporters, Ms. Foxham and Ms. Olson, to the research attorney, John Byrne, who's assisted us, our Pepperdine law clerks, Mr. Golliver and Ms. Carswell, our media liaison, Jerry Ann Hazlett and her staff, and of course the jury commissioner, Gloria Gomez, and her staff. All right, counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we excuse the jurors? Mr. Cochran?
One last time.
That's the family of Ron Goldman, obviously shattered by the decision of the jury. The people have spoken. O.J. Simpson not guilty on all counts in the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am now going to excuse you from further service on this case. As you know, this does absolve you from your vows of silence. You may take with you your juror notebooks as you have requested, and we'll be chatting with you shortly. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you all later. All right.
A tradition in American jurisprudence holds that there is a quick verdict. It's almost always for acquittal. No one knew quite what to expect in this case because there have been so many unexpected twists and turns, but in fact, after a very short deliberation yesterday, after a rereading of Alan Park's testimony, which many people thought indicated that they were going to go for a conviction, this jury has decided that Orenthal James Simpson is not guilty on all counts in the murder of his ex-wife, Ann Ron Goldman. He walks out of this court a free man, but a changed man as well. There will be many questions about the future of O.J. Simpson, who had been one of the most popular folk heroes in our popular culture. Now, what kind of life will he have? Will he be able to reclaim the custody of his children? And where do they go to live?
Appropriate Sheriff's facility and released forthwith. All right, we'll stand in recess.
Please clear the court.
He has been released forthwith. He does not return to the Los Angeles County Jail for one more hour. He is now a free man. Double jeopardy in the American judicial system means that he cannot be retried for these murders. This case is over. It's been an extraordinary experience for everyone involved. No one knew quite what to expect when the jury filed back in today, and just about 7 minutes ago, when the verdicts were read in that courtroom, you saw the visible signs of relief on the part of O.J. Simpson. You heard the sobs of disbelief from the family of Ron Goldman, and the family of Nicole Brown, sitting in the back of the public section, seemed to be stunned but showed no visible signs of an emotional outburst of any kind. Let's go now back to Los Angeles to our various experts who are assembled there. Ira Reiner and Roy Black, you called this case right. Ira, what do you think was the ultimate decision that the ultimate piece of evidence or absence of piece of evidence, or the ultimate piece of testimony that might have made the difference here?
Well, Tom, the prosecution was haunted throughout the entire case by the sloppiness and the carelessness of the investigation by the police department and by the coroner's office, and that came back to haunt them throughout the case. And then perhaps they were finished off by the whole business of the Furman tapes, which was just devastating. And you cannot ignore the question of race. That was a central issue to this case. The defense said that they were not going to play the race card, but of course they did. And the whole question of race enters into it in the sense that there is a major division in terms of how people look at this case, whether they are black or white. And the jury was predominantly black, and Johnny Cochran played to those sensibilities, and he played to it very skillfully. And, you know, I think Jack Ford may have hit on something earlier when he was commenting on the jury's failure to look at Simpson when they came in for the jury reread of testimony yesterday, suggesting that perhaps what it was is they understood he was guilty, but they were not prepared to convict him, and therefore they could not look at him. In any event, this was devastating for the prosecution. They worked long and hard and well, but it did not have the result, obviously, that they wanted.
Ira and the rest of you stand by there for a moment. We want to just show you some videotape now of one member of the defense team who was already preparing avenues of appeal as he watched the verdict come in. That's Alan Dershowitz of Harvard Law School. Here he is watching the videotape.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
Well, Alan Dershowitz does seem to be quite calm as he sits in his office watching.
State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
Mr. Dershowitz, let's go to you live now after we have seen that videotape of you watching that. Your colleague, Barry Scheck, who made the technical arguments, the DNA case, took apart the police investigative techniques and some of the forensic evidence as it was assembled by the Los Angeles County authorities, said to me earlier today, I know where Alan is coming from, but I have great confidence in our ability to persuade this jury that, in fact, that this case was tainted. It turns out that Barry Scheck was correct. You had some severe doubts about that.
Well, I'm the pessimist on the team, but I'm thrilled, of course, and I'm relieved. I'm also proud of having brought Barry Scheck into this case, because I think the contributions of the scientist lawyers really not only brought about justice in this case, but brought about a national civics lesson on distrusting the police and prosecutors when they rush to judgment in a case of this kind and focus only on one defendant. I have to disagree with Ira Reiner about the race issue. I think the fact that 12 jurors, 3 of whom were not African American, came to so quick a verdict, including one woman who had served on a previous jury and was able to turn them around from 11-1 for acquittal to 11-1 for conviction, showed that the arguments in this case transcended racial lines and appealed to all the reasonable people on the jury. I think basically the prosecution's case fell apart because of the sloppiness of the police, their focus on one suspect, the lab in LA, which for all of us who believe in law enforcement has to be upgraded and improved. The message of this case is, please, Los Angeles, upgrade your police force, upgrade your laboratories. Don't allow mistakes like this to happen again. Whatever you think the result is, whatever you think of the result, surely nobody can be satisfied with the way this case was investigated.
Mr. Dershowitz,
and I think the jury made that clear.
Mr. Dershowitz, the role of the defense team obviously was to give the very best possible legal arguments for the acquittal of Orenthal James Simpson, and they have succeeded in doing that. But if he didn't kill those two people, who did?
Well, that's the place where the LAPD fell down. You know, we provided them with information right in the beginning about comparable crimes that were unsolved. They just didn't want to listen. From day one, remember, the DA made an announcement that he personally believed Simpson was guilty. Marcia Clark made the same announcement before the blood tests even came back. We know that from the moment they learned from Mark Furman that O.J. Simpson had been previously in trouble with the police about spousal discord, we know that immediately they put the finger of suspicion on O.J. Simpson and O.J. Simpson alone. And the great tragedy is there may be somebody out there who is guilty and who the LAPD did not investigate. Look, the job of the jury is not to solve the crime. The job of the jury is to decide whether or not the prosecution made its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury has made that decision. It made it quickly. It made it unequivocally. It made it dramatically. And under the American system of justice, Orenthal James Simpson is now a free man, and he is free to go, and the LAPD has a lot of work to do to make sure that events like this don't repeat.
Jeff Toobin is a writer for The New Yorker. He has been seen a good deal here on NBC during the course of this trial. He was in the courtroom at the time the verdict was read, and as I remember the seating plan there, you're not too far from the Goldman family. Obviously, they were emotionally distraught by what they heard there today. Did Mr. Goldman have anything to say as he left the courtroom? Well, we'll get that audio repaired, and we'll go back to Mr. Toobin, who was in the courtroom. Keith Morrison is just outside the criminal courts building, and he was there when the verdict was read. Most of the people who were assembled were members of the press, but it did draw a large crowd of the curious as well, many of whom have become kind of O.J. Simpson trial groupies. What was the reaction outside, Keith?
Tom, before the verdict, in the last few minutes, a big crowd had gathered here, and as the verdict was being prepared, the silence that came over this crowd was quite remarkable. All one heard was the thumping helicopters overhead, and then the verdict was read, and the place just erupted in a spontaneous cheer. They were dancing, they were singing, they were happy. This is clearly a crowd that wanted a not guilty verdict, and when the not guilty verdict came down, we saw one lonely person standing in the middle of the crowd with a sign that said, "He's guilty," and the rest for 15 minutes kept singing and dancing and cheering about what happened. Tom?
All right, thank you very much, Keith Morrison. And the question, of course, is whether or not this verdict will divide the city along racial and cultural fault lines. O.J. Simpson was one of the city's greatest folk heroes. He starred at USC, returned there after his professional football career. He was a familiar figure throughout Los Angeles at celebrity golf tournaments and at charitable events. He was a member of the A-list of celebrities, and you'll recall that during the long ordeal of the Bronco ride, there were crowds that assembled along the freeway system in Los Angeles shouting, "Go Juice, go." Let's go back to our panel now of Roy Black and Jack Ford and Ira Reiner and Jerry Spence. And let's begin with you, Roy. Roy, you thought emotionally that they had a shot at getting, in fact, you said it would be not guilty. Intellectually, you were a little uncomfortable about that. Do you think that the jury approached this case the same way emotionally as opposed to taking an intellectual look at it?
Tom, I'm afraid so. The reason I predicted an acquittal is I thought that the human emotions of the case would overrule the facts of the case, because there are very compelling facts to this case. And my impression is that we in the criminal justice system are going to be paying for this verdict for many years, because the public's perception is that money, power, great lawyers, and the issue of race could overpower the facts in the case. And I'll tell you, my impression is right along that the emotions that are bubbling in this case were going to overrule any of the logic of the facts, and I think that's what happened.
Jack Ford, what do you think the consequences could be for the legal system if, in fact, Roy is right?
Well, I think Roy is right. You know, people are going to look at this and they're going to make those conclusions. One of the interesting things in it, I certainly think it would be helpful for the entire justice system and society if the jurors would at some point in time, in some fashion, be willing to share their thoughts with us. You know, we don't know what all of this means. People have to understand that a verdict in a criminal courtroom is not guilty or innocent. It's guilty or not guilty. And not guilty can mean a lot of things. It can mean innocent. Absolutely, you had nothing to do with it. It could also mean we suspect you did have something to do with it, but there were flaws in the prosecution's case here, so we feel compelled to let you go. It would be helpful to know what the jurors think about this case, because it would allow us to sit back and realize, well, where should we go in the justice system? One of the other things it teaches us, Tom, is this. We might, as observers, be able to peer into the jury box, so to speak, but we don't have the ability to peer into the minds and the souls of these jurors. And it's always interesting to me, and I'm sure to our other panel here who have spent a lot of time in courtrooms trying cases, that we don't truly know what jurors are going to do until they come out and tell us.
All right. Jack, we want to ask Jerry Spence about this as well, and we want to tell you that Barry Scheck is on his way to these NBC studios. I've been talking to him for the last couple of days, and Jerry, among other things, he said to me that he concentrated much of his closing argument on juror number 3, that is the white woman who had been in another jury case, and as Mr. Dershowitz reminded us, she was able to reverse that entire jury. She held out for a guilty conviction. She brought along everyone else. Scheck said when he made one of his closing arguments directly to her about the tainted evidence, he could see her visibly flinching. What happens in a courtroom in a deliberation like this to the dynamics of a jury?
Well, a jury, I think along these lines, Tom, that a jury has got an obligation not only to determine whether or not this man is guilty of the charge, but whether or not the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think therein lies the situation. Furman said it. Furman was the one who said it. He said, if I go down, the case goes down. And I think along this lines, there is a message from this jury. I agree with Mr. Dershowitz, who says that the message is that maybe or maybe not Mr. Simpson is guilty of this crime, but one thing we can be sure of, and that is that there was racial shenanigans going on here of some kind that we don't trust. And when people don't trust the police, it doesn't make any difference how good the evidence is. DNA can be evidence that proves the guilt. One chance out of 5 billion that he is not guilty, and yet people won't trust that evidence if the people who were dealing with that evidence weren't honest and trustworthy. And so we may be listening to a jury which is saying we may have to turn loose a man which we suspect was guilty of that crime, but in the final analysis, the proof has to come to us from competent evidence that we can believe and that we can trust. Yeah. There's another problem here too, Tom, and that is folks that have to make this decision have to go back to their own communities and have to explain their decision to those communities. In this case, there were 9 people from black communities and people that have to go home to talk to their parents, their friends, their relatives, their children, their next-door neighbors, explaining how they convicted this icon, O.J. Simpson, when there was a man like Furman in the background. So the first thing that the L.A. police has to do is to make sure that they take positive steps to reinforce the sense of credibility of their police department, which was totally lost in this case.
All right, thanks very much, Jerry Spence. I can't imagine any of you who are looking in just now have not heard the word. In fact, the verdict in the O.J. Simpson case, not guilty on all counts. And as this country and that community and the world begins to absorb that, obviously, there will be many, many questions. The questions that are the most painful at the moment, however, are for the family of Ronald Goldman. They were in the courtroom when the verdict was read, and Jeff Toobin, who is from the New Yorker magazine and has been covering this trial from the beginning, is with us now. We think that we can now hear you as well as see you.
Hi, Tom.
Did Mr. Goldman have anything to say as he left?
He did not. He really almost, the whole family basically ran out of the courtroom as soon as the jury left. Very noticeably, they did not stand when the jury left, which is the traditional sign of respect to the jury, nor did the Brown family stand either.
The Brown family, we heard obvious sobbing from the Goldman family. The Brown family seemed to be frozen in place, kind of stunned by what they were hearing and not looking at each other and not looking at O.J. Simpson. Can you give me a better reading on how that family reacted?
I think that's exactly right. They did not have much of a reaction except being stunned. I mean, Tom, what was so striking about this, particularly in the moments before the camera went on, is that the defense team looked like they were getting ready to lose. Johnny Cochran went from lawyer to lawyer, and he gave them each a big hug, and he said very audibly, he said, "Be strong, be strong, be strong." And then the prosecution team actually seemed somewhat relaxed. They were all sitting around with not smiles on their face, but they looked relaxed and confident. And then the verdict came, and needless to say, roles reversed.
Well, if there had been any momentum, I suppose, among the second guessers in the last 24 hours, both legal experts and journalists and people who were just looking in, it was in fact that because they asked to hear Alan Park again, and it was a very short time, they'd made up their minds early on, and that the prosecution had probably scored some telling points here. Maybe the DNA stuff was too confusing, and they were seeing the forest, not the trees. When that flipped and it went the other way, and the prosecution had to absorb what had to be for Marcia Clark and Chris Darden especially, some very, very difficult news. How did they respond?
Well, again, what was curious is they basically stood around in shock. The defense team was hugging each other, clapping each other on the back, with a single very noticeable exception. Robert Shapiro stood apart from his colleagues and walked over to the prosecution table and offered seemingly sincere handshakes to everyone. Bill Hodgman, who is a very even-tempered fellow, gave him a polite greeting. Marcia Clark looked like that it was a good thing she didn't have a weapon in her hand, and he was. And then Robert Shapiro continued with Chris Darden. They stood around. Tom Lang gave Marcia Clark and Chris Darden a big hug. But don't kid yourself, these people are appalled at this result.
Yeah, Jeffrey Toobin, thank you very much. We have one report from inside the courtroom that juror number 6 was a 43-year-old black male, one of, in fact, 2 males on the jury from the Mid-Wilshire district, gave O.J. a Black Power fist sign after the verdict was read, and a 38-year-old black female from Inglewood, I think it's juror number 6 as I remember, wiped her eyes as the verdict was read. Everyone else was stone-faced. Yesterday when they filed in, they did not look at O.J. Simpson. Many people thought that was a sign that they had found against him. Quite the contrary. They found very swiftly that he was not guilty on all counts. Here at Rockefeller Center in New York, just outside of Studio 1A, a large crowd has gathered to watch on television and to read our electronic banner. They now know what the verdict is, and we have a question for our experts from one of the kiosks out there, so let's go outside. Tell us who you are and what you'd like to know.
Hi, Tom. My name's Steve Aldea. How is the LAPD going to repair their public image after Mark Furman took the Fifth Amendment in court?
That's a good question. We don't have anybody directly from the Los Angeles Police Department out there, but Ira Reiner, who is familiar with the LAPD, is standing by in Los Angeles right now. Ira, this has been a long curse on the Los Angeles Police Department. The double standard for justice there, the racist attitudes of many of the police. It exploded into the open in the Rodney King case. There was the Christopher Commission. That meant that we got a new judge, a new chief of police in Willie Williams. He's had his own difficulties. What is the city going to do about its police department?
Well, Tom, I do not want to be in the position of being an apologist for the LA Police Department because, as you have commented on so frequently, I've been a rather severe critic of that department. It has its problems, but I think they are exaggerated. Now, to say they are exaggerated is not to deny that they are serious. And like any police department anywhere, there are indications of racism throughout the ranks, but it is overstated when we talk about LAPD having a racist police department. Now, we have a black police chief in Los Angeles, so at least at the very top, one cannot make the suggestion of racism. But I'll tell you quite frankly...
Ira, just hold for a moment. We're going to tell people that that is a bus that is transporting the jury away from the criminal courts building, presumably to the hotel where they have been sequestered now for more than a year. And the jury has said in the open court to Judge Ito in questionnaires they didn't want to talk to the attorneys and they didn't want to talk to the news media. Whether or not they can hold that pact together remains to be seen, obviously. Journalists will be chasing them down wherever they can, and some of them may make private deals for books or for paid television appearances of one kind or another. But the jury now has left the criminal courts building. Let me just pose it in another way. One of the problems in Los Angeles, to be quite candid about it, is that there's a lot of very violent black crime that goes on in that city. South Central Los Angeles is held hostage in many ways by some vicious and well-armed black gangs. That enters into the equation as well, doesn't it?
Well, of course it does, and that's really true in any urban center in the United States. And look, there is racism within every police department to a certain degree, but to the extent that you're going to get it out, it is not going to come from the top down. It has to come from within the ranks. And by that, I don't mean merely that a police officer has to say that he is not a racist in anything that he may do, but he cannot tolerate racism from his peers. And that's the key to it. That which you will not do yourself, but will tolerate in others, will continue. And if it's going to be purged from police departments, it's not going to be purged from the top down, even with a black police chief. It's going to have to be purged from the bottom up.
Thank you, Ira. We have been wired up, as it were, at many locations around the world to try to get a reaction to the verdict in the O.J. Simpson case. Among the places that we had a television camera was Howard University, the well-known African-American university in Washington, D.C. Let's go now to that videotape and get some of the student reaction as those students heard the verdict. Well, among those students, at least, I think that there is no question that the race argument resonated very, very strongly. It is one that many people, black and white and Latino, were reluctant to talk about openly. But in fact, it is seething in this country, not only in the courtrooms or on the streets, but in the workplace and wherever society gathers. The question is now, in fact, was this a trial about race? And if, in fact, the verdict had a large racial component, where do we go from here? Someone who can talk about all that is Robert Tarver, a well-known criminal defense lawyer who has been an expert commentator here on NBC. He is in Chicago at this time. In fact, what do you think the place of race was in the decision?
Well, I think it was flat square in the middle of it. This case was about race, and remember, the defense didn't put it here. I don't know if it's really fair to suggest that this jury made this decision based upon emotion. I think they could have looked at the evidence very rationally and said that this does not fly because of the doubts that we have. I'm hearing a lot of suggestions that the entire thing was controlled by emotion and simply race, but I don't know if that's quite accurate.
Mr. Tarver, we just want to interrupt you for just a moment. We'll come right back. That's O.J. Simpson leaving the criminal courts building. He is now a free man, forthwith, in the words of Judge Lance Ito. Big questions, obviously, about his future, about what kind of life he will have and how he will lead it, what he will do. He spent most of his personal fortune, so far as we can tell, on his defense, $8 million by some estimates. He did make some money from a book that he wrote while he was in prison with the help of a friend, responding to letters that had been written to him. He was able to sign football cards as well and get some money from that, several $100,000, but given the enormous amount of expense that he had to accumulate in the course of his defense, that most of that is gone. The bigger questions for O.J. Simpson, obviously, are not about money, but what kind of life can he have and whether he gets his children back and where he goes from here. And and what he does with his life. Go on now, Mr. Tarver, if you would, please.
Well, I simply was saying that I think that in dealing with the problems of race, responsible individuals will see this as a chance to go forward. They'll see it as a chance to build something. Ira Reiner talked very succinctly about the responsibility of the police to police themselves, and I think that that's been brought to the forefront. But more importantly, there are a number of issues here that have been brought forward, and I think everyone in looking at this can find something to address about themselves.
Mr. Tarver, thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you during the course of the afternoon and the evening as NBC News continues its special coverage of the People versus O.J. Simpson. Orenthal James Simpson, now a free man. We believe that he's in that minivan driving away now into a new and much different life than he had more than a year ago. It was June of 1994, obviously, that his ex-wife and her friend Ron Goldman were found murdered. He was arrested, charged with those murders. Today, he was found not guilty on all counts by a jury of his peers, 10 women, 2 men, 9 blacks, 2 whites, 1 Hispanic, a very swift deliberation, not guilty on all counts. Where that van will take O.J. Simpson immediately, we cannot say. Where he will go for the longer term, it's hard to know at this time. Let's go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where NBC News correspondent Frederica Whitfield was at a restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where, like most places in America, everything came to a stop, I presume, and everyone watched. Frederica, what happened there?
It certainly did, Tom. When the verdict was read, all fell silent here. The clatter of the voices, the clatter of the dishes, all of it was quiet. We're at Shooter's Restaurant here in Fort Lauderdale, and among those who were cheering and some of the applause that we heard today was also Steve Gordon. What was your reaction to the not guilty verdict?
I was a little shocked. I thought he was guilty, but I think it shows that the system worked and that there was reasonable doubt that he was guilty. So.
Okay, and Barry Stone, are you surprised that there was some applauding going on here?
Well, I believe that he was guilty, but I think that, again, the system works, and you get the most expensive lawyers, they're going to get you off. And that's what happened. He had all the right people going for him, and they raised enough reasonable doubt that I think that the decision was made before they even went into the jury room.
Thanks very much. Richard Magna, what kind of message do you believe this sends, a not guilty verdict?
Well, guilty or not guilty, there's families involved here, and today nobody won or everybody lost. It's a tragedy for the families and for everybody involved, and it's just a sad day. There shouldn't be any celebration.
What kind of interpretation do you have now on what the judicial system means in this country?
Well, they claim it works, but I still say it's a rich man's justice. If you got the money, you never go to jail. Look at Rodney King.
All right, thanks very much. So again, we have very mixed reaction here in Fort Lauderdale at Shooter's Restaurant. A number of people were glued to the 10 television sets here. There has been a very close following here at the restaurant during the O.J. Simpson trial. Back to you, Tom.
All right, thank you very much, Frederica Whitfield. I want to go back to Los Angeles to our experts out there. Ira Reiner, will there be civil suits against O.J. Simpson of one kind or another after this verdict?
Can you repeat that?
Ira, I was asking, will there be civil suits against O.J. Simpson after this verdict?
Oh, there is a pending suit right now by Mr. Goldman, and there's no question that that will be pursued. And that's an entirely different standard. You're dealing there when you talk about wrongful death as a civil action with a mere preponderance of the evidence. And quite frankly, as long as you need to address the race issue, it'll be an entirely different jury, and there will be perhaps a very, very different result.
Well, we saw some changes, obviously, in the case of Rodney King with the police who were in one venue and then they went to another venue and there was a different kind of verdict. Do you think there's a possibility that in some federal court that there could be a violation of Ron Goldman's rights?
I seriously doubt that. I think that in the King case, they stretched the law about as far as the law could ever be stretched in terms of the question of double jeopardy in order to find a basis for a federal criminal action. I cannot conceive of, I should never say that, I suppose, but I cannot conceive of stretching the law that far in this case to get around the principle of double jeopardy. It's done, it's over. Guilty or innocent, he's a free man.
Ira, we're looking now at what we think is the Los Angeles County men's lockup, and O.J. Simpson may be retrieving some of his personal effects from there, but he doesn't have to spend another moment in that lockup where he spent such a long time, more than 400 days, obviously, in a solitary cell not too far from the Menendez brothers at one point, who are coming back for a retrial as well. We now think that he is driving away from there. Where he'll go, we can't say, but there are so many helicopters overhead, they constitute a small media air force in Los Angeles, and I would think that there will be live coverage of that minivan to wherever it may be taking O.J. Simpson. How they can avoid the press at this point is beyond me. I'm joined here in New York now by a man who was a primary and important part of the defense of O.J. Simpson, who handled one half of the closing arguments. He was the expert on DNA and the collection of evidence, forensic evidence. That's Barry Scheck, who is a passionate New York criminal trial lawyer. He joined the defense team more than a year ago and has given up a good deal of his life to it. He told me last night and again this morning he thought that there would be an acquittal. Was that your heart speaking or your mind speaking when you were talking to me today?
Well, I think it was my mind speaking, because I think that most people misinterpreted the readback. The readback, I think, went to the issue between Johnny Cochran and Marcia Clark over when those 1, 2, 3 thumps were heard. And Cato Kalin had testified that the thumps occurred between 10:40 and 10:45. And if one carefully analyzed the evidence, that really was impossible for Mr. Simpson to have made those thumps and have been at the Bundy scene, because I think we proved very convincingly through the testimony of Dr. Baden and Dr. Lee that the time between the first wound to Mr. Goldman's neck and the last puncture wound in his chest that only created 100 cc's of blood, that the time between those 2 wounds were 10 minutes. The defense timeline witnesses, all independent citizens who were initially reporting their observations to the prosecution, all put the struggle as starting at 10:30, 10:35. So if you add all that up, it's very, very hard for the prosecution's timeline to work. In order to make the timeline work, Ms. Clark suggested that the thumps happened at 10:52. She got 10:52 by saying that Alan Park had finished speaking with his boss, Dale St. John, on the telephone. After that call was over, and the time record showed that's 10:54, then and only then he saw Cato Kalin. She says, well, if it took Cato Kalin 2 or 3 minutes to hear the thumps and then to go out with his flashlight, then we can say the thumps happened at 10:52. So this was a direct contradiction. They had it on one of their charts. Mr. Cochran challenged it directly. And when you listen to that readback, you'll note that they stopped listening at the point where they heard that Mr. Park was still on the phone when he saw Cato with the flashlight.
Did you expect that this case would be settled on the timeline, or did you think it would be settled on the whole DNA and contamination of evidence question that you argue so persuasively?
Well, I think that it's settled on all these things, but if you think about it logically, and I think that people really ought to, because I believe this was a verdict based on the evidence. Obviously, racism was a part of this case, because one of the key detectives in the case turned out to be a genocidal racist who the jury didn't know, but we all know, planted evidence against African Americans based simply on hate, and believed in an ethic of policing that the good police officer is somebody who picks out the bad person and then makes the evidence fit. And by his own statements, he's not alone. But my point really is this, that if you look at the evidence concretely, first, in a circumstantial evidence case, both sides agreed, and the instructions clearly indicate, you have to prove opportunity, or the timeline. So if you look at the timeline, and our timeline was very strong with independent witnesses, if there's no opportunity to commit the crime, then you must have a reasonable doubt. Now, obviously, if the jury felt that there weren't many reasonable doubts raised about the blood evidence, then they might have gone beyond the timeline and looked at the blood evidence. But once they feel that the blood evidence is in serious dispute and there's a reasonable doubt about it, if the timeline doesn't fit and the rest of the facts don't fit in terms of why he would do it and the demeanor and all kinds of things, I think that the verdict follows from the evidence.
Your only obligation is to raise reasonable doubt. But do you think that they decided this case based on reasonable doubt, or they decided that O.J. Simpson had nothing to do with the murder?
Well, they decided it based on the fact that, if the timeline doesn't fit, if evidence is manufactured, if it's proven to, I think, most people's satisfaction that Mark Fuhrman was a liar. I mean, people forget, I must say that I've been very disappointed by a lot of the commentary about this case, because I don't think that many of the people watching follow the evidence. Take the testimony of Mr. Rokar, the photographer. He came in at the end of the trial and testified that that picture of Mark Fuhrman pointing at the glove was taken an hour and 15 minutes before sunrise, or at 4:30 in the morning. Why is Mark Fuhrman pointing to a glove at 4:30 in the morning at the Bundy location when he testified that he actually only made that picture and pointed that glove at 7:30? That's a huge, huge contradiction for the prosecutors, because their own witnesses coming in, and if you look at the photographs, they're clearly taken at night. We had a series of contact sheets. That blows a huge hole in the middle of the case. Then you have Detective Van Adder being impeached by an FBI agent, not to mention those two rather interesting characters that came in and testified. If the two main detectives are lying about this, if you have 1.5 milliliters of blood missing, and I don't think there was any question about that, if you have EDTA on the sock, which was a pretty flaky piece of evidence to begin with, if you have EDTA evidence on the back gate, if you have...
The EDTA, give a translation of that, that's a contaminant, a preservative in the blood.
It's a preservative in a reference tube.
Right.
What is it doing on samples, the sock and the back gate, which are not discovered until way later? And if that kind of evidence, important evidence, is manufactured...
You found the EDTA, but their experts did not, right?
Well, no. What happened in this case, and people have to remember it, is that after the opening statement, where we made allegations about the sock, the prosecution said, all right, we'll refute the possibility that there's any evidence pointing to EDTA. Let's send it to the FBI. They sent it to the FBI, and it was the FBI's test results that came back with findings consistent with EDTA in the sock and the back gate. Then their analyst began to back off from it, and the jury didn't even get to hear all the problems with that FBI analyst because it was near the end of the trial, and the judge decided to keep away evidence that the FBI itself had found that his testimony, where he was trying to back away from his own findings, was less than candid.
People who thought that O.J. Simpson should have been convicted will say, this jury didn't deliberate. They made a judgment about a lot of other matters. They were only in there for 4 hours. It's a very complex case. How could they have come to a conclusion?
Well, I think that first of all, these people have been there a long time, and they wanted to go home. And what began to happen in this case, and one can feel it as a trial lawyer, is that there was a certain rhythm developing. As the defense case came in, we put on expert after expert that basically went untouched. Dr. John Gerdes proving that the laboratory was really a cesspool of contamination. Dr. Baden proving that the struggle would have to take most reasonably, period between the two wounds, 10 minutes, that the perpetrator or perpetrators would be covered with blood. Dr. Henry Lee coming in with Dr. McDonald and showing that there was a wet transfer on that sock from surface 1 to surface 3, which can't happen if there's a leg in the sock. Also doing an analysis of the crime scene and proving how much blood there would have to be. And then there's no blood of any great amount in the Bronco. That's extraordinary stuff.
We're looking now at O.J. Simpson going down the Harbor Freeway. This is a long way from that white Bronco chase, obviously. You were an intimate member of this defense team. When we did not see you in court, when you were just off to the side with O.J. Simpson, were there times when he just lost hope?
No, O.J. Simpson is quite remarkable. The one thing that I found most impressive from the very beginning, and I think every member of the defense team will tell you, is that he has absolutely, unequivocally insisted upon his innocence. He never gave you the feeling, in even a little way, that he was anything other than 100% stone cold innocent. You never got that feeling. And believe me, there were some dark days, because when some of this forensic evidence started to come in, it looked pretty bad until all of a sudden, it's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that EDTA starts showing up on these samples that are collected late, and that Mark Fuhrman turns out to be everything that we said he was and much more. And that Detective Van Adder was caught in lies, and that there was wet transfer on the bindles. There's a whole series of things that happened in this case that begins to go your way when you're representing a person who's an innocent man wrongly accused.
You're
But even if people don't want to accept that, because so many people have told them what they're supposed to believe about this case, what I'm hopeful is that if people sit down and rationally examine the evidence, they're going to have to confront the fact that so much of the forensic evidence in this case lacked integrity, should not have been trusted. And we're talking about samples that have been doctored, and there's good evidence to prove it. And beyond that, I think that the course of the deliberations makes a lot of sense. If the prosecution's timeline can't be true, based on the independent testimony of citizen witnesses who were traveling along that crime scene, who the prosecution knew about before the defense and then chose not to call, if their testimony is standing up and he can't be in two places at the same time, you know, they're instructed in a circumstantial evidence case that if an essential fact is not proven, they must acquit. And here an essential fact certainly was not proven. I mean, that jury took one look at the timeline and they knew they didn't have to go beyond that.
Let me ask you about a couple of other things. There are reports that Robert Shapiro was not comfortable with the closing arguments of Johnny Cochran. In fact, here are your colleagues right now. Why don't you just stay with me, right? You want to hear this, right?
Yes.
This is Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro and Gerald Ullman and F. Lee Bailey and other members of the defense team, Carl Douglas, who were in the courtroom. There were reports that Robert Shapiro was uncomfortable with the closing arguments of Johnny Cochran when he compared Furman to Hitler, that he'd gone too far. Hitler, one of the great monsters of the 20th century, responsible for concentration camps. Were you comfortable with that analogy?
Well, I think that people misinterpreted exactly what was said. He was talking about something different. I think he's about to do that now.
Did you have some rip-roaring arguments within the defense team?
No, when?
Well, at various stages about whether you're going the right way.
Just by having everybody introduce themselves, say their name so that you all know who is here, who will be speaking. That will be followed by Mr. Cochran making an introduction, stated by the family. Mr. Cochran will then make another statement, and then we'll have questions, and I'll recognize those people who have questions so that it's not a lot of confusion without.
Howard Harris.
Sean Chapman.
Gerald Ullman.
Carl Douglas.
Johnny Cochran.
Lee Bailey.
Robert Shapiro.
Bob Blazier, Barry Scheck, and Peter Neufeld. Shirley Baker.
Jason Simpson.
Arnell Simpson.
Eunice Durden Simpson. Carmelita Simpson Durio.
That's it.
Joella Demetrius.
Thank you all very much for coming today. First, I want to thank God for this verdict. He always directs our paths, and he's worthy to be praised. And at the outset, Jason Simpson, the eldest male child of O.J. Simpson, will read a statement from Mr. Simpson and from the family.
I want to echo that. Me and my family want to thank God, without whom I don't know where we'd be. He's truly
amazing.
A statement from my father. A statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned. My second obligation is to my family and to those friends who never wavered in their support. But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow. I can only hope that someday, despite every prejudicial thing that has been said about me publicly, both in and out of the courtroom, people will come to understand and believe that I would not, could not, and did not kill anyone. My father will have more to say at a later time.
Thank you, Jason, and from the family. We will take questions. I'll just make a brief statement, then we'll take questions thereafter. On behalf of the entire team, I just like to say how grateful we are for this verdict, because we think this verdict bespeaks justice. We never wavered in our faith. We were always optimistic, and that optimism proved right. I'd like to just individually thank all of the team members. Everybody on this team played a great, great part in this victory. There's no question about it. We hung together in the tough times. We always saw this day coming, and now that it's here, we feel really good about it. I pay particular tribute today to Joel and Demetrius, the lady over my right shoulder, who helped us pick this jury. We lost 10 jurors, but yet we still had 12 who we felt did the right thing. The other two people who aren't present that I'd like to thank are Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who couldn't make it back from New York, but they're in Neufeld's living room today watching this, and we send our love and regards to them. Mr. Simpson, needless to say, is ecstatic, wants to get on with his life, and we are all ecstatic, so we'll take your questions.
Johnny, a lot of people are already saying that this was a case in which race transcended the facts, overcame the facts. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question, Linda. If you watch this trial, if you watch the arguments, then you know this idea of any jury nullification or the idea we didn't have the facts is preposterous. In the opening part of my argument, through a strategy we devised with Lee Bailey, we said that if we could shatter the prosecution's timeline so that O.J. Simpson couldn't have committed this crime, that there would be a reasonable doubt. That's even before we ever got to the socks, the glove, and Furman or anything else. So these pundits who make those statements don't know what they're talking about. They haven't tried cases. They don't know what they're talking about. This was a case based upon the evidence. And so that's all we were saying. There was a reasonable doubt. And when you see a trial that lasts 9 months, where the jury takes this period of time, they have gone to what we said, that if you look at that timeline, O.J. Simpson could not, did not, would not have committed this crime. And I think that becomes very clear. So I think that's a very appropriate question.
Johnny, was there a point during the summation, during your closing argument, that you were looking in the eyes of the jury and you knew something, was telling you something, that you were winning?
Well, it's always hard to say, Joe, but I mean, I felt that they were very attentive. For a tired jury, they were very attentive. And then one of the jurors got up and went out, and when she came back, she'd been crying. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then they all started, a lot of them took notes who hadn't been taking notes before. And I could contrast that with the other arguments. They took a lot of notes, and I felt that was probably important.
Yes, Johnny, the jurors went out for 4 hours. Right before this trial, there seemed to be a lot of sadness among the Simpson family. Did you prepare O.J. Simpson for a guilty verdict?
You know, that's a tough question. We never talked about a guilty verdict, and that would have been our fault. But we were so optimistic. We really believed in this case and in O.J. Simpson. And we talked only, even yesterday, when I got back to town last night, I talked to O.J. Simpson last night at 10 o'clock, and he could only talk about going home and seeing his children.
But with the Park testimony, when they asked to see the Park testimony, did you think there was a possibility for a guilty verdict?
Well, you know, what we thought was, you know, we've been around a long time, and what we thought was this, that 1 or 2 jurors had a question about the timeline. And I talked to Carl about 5 times yesterday in a row from where I was, and I wanted to know where they stopped, what they heard. They heard, among other things, that Cato Kalin was seen about 10:49, maybe 3 or 4 minutes after those knocks, just like I read in the transcript. It wasn't 10:52 or 10:53 like Marcia wanted to push it back on her timeline. And I felt good about that. So I felt that when you have the rereads are very confusing. You have the rereads, those who have a problem then say, okay, I've heard enough. And they go back in and do their job.
Johnny, this is a question for you or perhaps one of the members of the family. I wondered what Mr. Simpson is going to do today, now that he's an ex-defendant, where he's going and where he's...
I don't think we can really talk about that because for security concerns, Jeffrey. But he's going to start his life all over again.
And what are his short-term plans, or is he going to stay in Los Angeles, or?
I think he's going to probably address all these things himself soon.
Yes, Mr. Cochran, you have said publicly that you believe race plays a role in everything. I'd like to know what role race played in this trial.
Well, what I said before, Jim, was that race plays a part of everything in America. And we need to understand that. And then we stop ducking and dodging from that, we'll be better off. Now, basically, in this case, I think that from a standpoint of race, it was introduced by this witness, Furman. This stuff about playing a race card is preposterous. It would malpractice if a man has racist views in a case and a lawyer doesn't pursue that. Anybody who says that doesn't know how to try cases, doesn't know anything about anything. So you have to pursue it because that's your job. So they introduced Furman, and then we dealt with it. But we choose to call it the credibility card. I mean, we pursued his credibility. Do you know that on that jury instruction, a witness willfully false in one material part can be distrusted in others? For all we know, they could have knocked out all of Furman's and Van Adder's testimony. So that's the answer to that. I mean, so I think it became very apparent because they brought him. He was their witness. We didn't call him.
Johnny, in Jason's opening statement, he said that O.J. wanted to pursue the killer or killers in these murders once he gets out. Does he offer any idea or ideas as to who this could be?
I'm sure we'll all talk about that, and I'm sure he has some strong ideas, and we'll be talking about that, and you'll probably hear more about that, Pat, in the days to come.
With all due respect to the attorneys, I'd prefer hearing from some family members, if I may, particularly the women to my right. What was the last 24 hours like for you? Shirley, Carmelita, Arnell, Mrs. Simpson?
We were prayerful.
Yeah.
We were very prayerful, but we were on an emotional roller coaster. And when one would break down, the other ones would come together and lift them up, and then the next one would break down. So we were just all there for each other. But,
well, I was always in prayer. I knew that my son was innocent. And I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much. And I believed in that. And so therefore, that's why I kept the faith. And I had confidence in his representative. Thank you.
Arnell, if I may.
Yesterday was a difficult day, but there was a peacefulness, a calmness for myself, and I know with my other family members. We're a very strong family, and we stick together, and we were very prayerful, and we just knew that no matter what was going to happen, that God was going to take care of us. And we didn't really go one way or the other, but we just knew that God was going to take care of us, and just knowing that we would get through it.
Shirley?
what we knew, when you know that someone is innocent, you are able to hold your head up high, and that's the one thing that our family has tried to do during this whole trial, is to carry ourselves with great dignity and to let the justice system do what it has to do. We knew O.J. was innocent, and we had all the confidence in the world and the team that was put together, and we're just thankful to them, to O.J., to all of you, to all the people that's been so nice to us. We want you guys to know that we really appreciate the way that you have responded to us in the good and bad times, and we want to thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, I just feel, for so many months you've been asking me, how do I feel? And I tell you, I just feel like standing on top of this table and dancing a jig. And I just want to thank you guys.
Yes, Johnny, do you see this verdict returned as any referendum on the LAPD?
No, I don't want to read a lot of things into the verdict. I mean, I think, and I take this opportunity to compliment the district attorney's office. They fought very, very hard. This was a real heck of a trial, believe you me. You saw lawyers go at it on both sides. It's hard to say because we haven't talked to the jurors. I do believe that there were credibility problems with members of the LAPD, some who testified in this case, and I believe that probably has had some effect. And I think we saw some other things too, and I hope that out of this trial, we always look for something positive. I hope that the coroner's office will get their act together. Citizens of LA County should demand that. Hope the LAPD lab will do what's necessary to get up to speed. We deserve better. I hope that the investigators will do better jobs in future cases. I hope they'll abide by the state law. If the state law says call the coroner immediately, call the coroner immediately. Don't wait 10 hours. And I think there's a lot of things we learned in this case.
I'd like to direct this question to Shirley Baker and Arnell Simpson. There are 2 small children involved in this matter who are currently in the guardianship of a family that believes that O.J. Simpson killed the mother of those children. How are you going to put this family back together?
With God and faith. We got to take it one day at a time. And there's no answers because so much has happened. There's just a lot of mending and healing that needs to take place there. And for me to answer, I can't really answer that question because we just really have to take it one day at a time. But we'll do the best that we can. Well, I don't know. I don't know. When we get to that, we'll deal with it.
I think you should always remember, though, you have 2 families, the Brown family and the Simpson family, and we are 2 families, and we have 2 children that we love, and we're going to do what we can, the very best for the children.
Johnny, I want to ask you what you make of the jury's behavior over the past couple of days, and especially today. They've refused to talk to the lawyers. They don't want to explain their verdict to the public. They came to court today dressed in exercise wear, very casually, after we've seen them for 8 months dressed in suits to come to court. Were they trying to send a message? Were they being contemptuous of the proceedings at all?
I don't think so. I think they knew they were going to go home today, Sally. I think they knew yesterday they had to wait one more day. I think Judge Ito had them all packed, so I'm sure their wonderful clothes that we saw during this trial were all packed away. I think they're a very respectful jury. They were very professional. As all of you reported yesterday, you could not tell on their faces how they had voted. They were very professional. I wasn't here yesterday, and I looked for different things. I could tell today. I could tell today it was going to be all right for us, I felt.
Still try to talk with them?
I would love to, somewhere down the road, talk to them because they've done a really important task here. And I would like to do that.
Johnny, there were many yesterday, and no doubt there will be many today, who are concerned about the rapidity with which the jury came to its decision. There are those who say it appears as if it's impossible, that they hadn't either reached a determination on their own, as the judges said not to do before they were supposed to, or perhaps had talked to one another, that it seems as if it just isn't possible to have reviewed this much material in this short a period of time.
What I think, and maybe some of my colleagues will want to respond to this, what I think is this. When they went out on Friday, you remember that I was at the podium when they had a 4-person already. I think this jury had a sense of whom they respected, and in fact, Tracy Kennedy, one of our former jurors, said last night that they always respected juror number 1, and so that probably wasn't a hard decision for them. I believe that based upon having participated in the arguments, that this jury felt the prosecution hadn't proven this case, and when ultimately you talk to them, that's going to be where they came down. If you didn't believe the timeline, if you didn't believe that O.J. Simpson had enough time to commit this crime, that he couldn't go upstairs, change clothes, bathe, throw away all the clothes, the gun, the knife, the weapon, the shoes, and all that stuff, Ms. Clark gave him 5 minutes to do all that. If you think about that reasonably, and then tie that into the circumstantial evidence thing, is that reasonable? I mean, who in America, you get caught up in all these facts, but you got to look at what the law is. So if they made that determination, it didn't take very long. And if 1 or 2 people said, well, let's hear what Ellen Park has to say on the timing, then you have a verdict.
So you went on the timeline, not on Mark Furman.
Well, I haven't talked to him yet, but I think it may be a combination of both. I don't know.
Johnny, one of the interpretations of this case is going to be that if you are rich in America, you can get a good outcome. But if you are poor, and then the justice system will just run over you. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I'd like to let one of my brethren or sisters answer that question. Bobby Blazer, Bob, Shapiro, anyone?
It's an interesting concept, and there's a lot of truth to that. That unfortunately, in most places in this country, people who do not have adequate funds cannot properly defend themselves. But it worked both ways in this case. In this case, our small group of lawyers that were put together from June the 14th were up against the most intensive investigation probably in the history of criminal justice. Not only did the Los Angeles Police Department participate in this, the Chicago Police Department, the FBI, Interpol. They brought in DAs from 2 different jurisdictions, as well as 40 to 50 DAs. They had upwards of 100 officers at any one time investigating this case. And if we did not have adequate resources, we wouldn't have been able to come close to present all the crucial evidence that had to be shown. If only this case had proceeded based on a grand jury indictment with no cross-examination, we'd have been in a much more difficult position. So I think all in all, we were in a position where they had enormous resources, we had limited resources, and worked very hard.
I'd like to comment on that. I think no matter how much resources a defendant has, they can never match the resources of the state. And at this very moment, as we talk, Congress is debating cutting the funding of the Legal Services Corporation, eliminating funding for the death penalty centers that provide defense to indigents in death penalty cases. I think rather than talk about what you can achieve with resources, we need to take a long, hard look at how many defendants have to run this gauntlet without resources and what precautions we have in our system to ensure that they too can achieve justice.
With all the faults that you found, with the coroner's office, with the investigators, with the crime lab, with the LAPD, do you expect there to be any kind of ripple effect with people that have already been convicted or whose trial is pending?
As we have been listening to the defense team, we are watching now not a white Bronco, but a white minivan carrying O.J. Simpson, not a suspect or a fugitive from justice, but in fact a free man, acquitted on all counts in the murder of his ex-wife, Anne Ron Goldman, returning to his home on Rockingham in West Los Angeles. It was in that very driveway that we witnessed that tense, dramatic standoff more than a year ago, after he had been driven throughout Southern California for a full day by his friend A.C. Cowlings, who in fact I think is standing just outside the minivan there. That's Cowlings there and embracing O.J. Simpson.
Remember, Judge Ito said he
Their
couldn't
journey
do this from here.
now
Will you be
complete.
making any statement later today?
I don't know. That'll be up to him. But I do think you'll be hearing from him. I think that he is the one who's had to suffer through this. And I think that, as we said to you, he really always wanted to testify.
It's a
We'll be hearing from him in the future.
lavish estate in an area called Brentwood, which is in West Los Angeles, not too far from UCLA.
I'm Cynthia Tinsley, everyone. You've been watching NBC's live coverage of the Simpson verdict, talking with members of the DREAM team, the Simpson defense team. We're answering questions from reporters as well as Simpson's family members, culminating in that scene with Al Cowlings hugging O.J. Simpson as he arrived home at his mansion on Rockingham in West Los Angeles. Let's turn our attention now to local reaction to the Simpson verdict, the not guilty verdict that the jury rendered earlier today. Joining us will be our own Angela Robinson, who comes to us from the AU Center, and Mike Landis from the Varsity Restaurant. Let's begin with Angela.
Cynthia, thank you. We are in Studio A at Clark Atlanta University, and when the verdict was announced, this room, everyone jumped practically to the ceiling. Jubilation, celebration. We've all been going through a lot of emotions. This young man right here, Michael, who is a junior, this body came out of the chair when you heard not guilty. What does all that say?
I was just relieved. I mean, I've been watching this trial from like day one. It's like almost a part of my life as it is anybody else's. And just to see a taste of justice being done for the African Americans is good. It doesn't really help things that much, but you know, it's good to see a black man get off for a change.
Was it really a case about race? Was that the case?
Yes, it was. I mean, because as Johnny said in his press conference, we deal with it daily but don't want to confront it. But until we do confront it in the open, we'll be able to live together, you know, more as a country on a whole instead of as separate but not equal.
This woman back here, Kia, who is also a junior, I believe, did not leap to her feet when she heard the verdict. What was that about? Explain why.
I understand that he was not guilty of the evidence presented, but I do feel that he was guilty. And I didn't leap to my feet because I don't have a connection to O.J., and I didn't just automatically take the connection that this is a black man. And so I have to stand up for him. I feel more justice was served for black men during the Susan Smith trial when she tried dependent on a black man, but it turned out that he was not guilty. That was more of a relief that it's not always the black man that does it.
We have got a lot of opinions in this room. We'll hear more from these students. Now let's go to Mike Landis. He's at the varsity. Mike?
Angela, it's very interesting now. Very, very empty here at the varsity. About 2 o'clock it does do that, but I'll tell you, it was jam-packed when that verdict came down. And we want to share with you now some of the opinions after they saw that verdict come down this afternoon.
I was not very surprised. I did expect them to convict him, but I knew there was a possibility that he would not be convicted.
I was very surprised and very disappointed because I thought with all the evidence that it was just obvious of his guilt.
Very surprised, but very pleased.
What made you think, did you personally feel he was in it?
I had some doubts, yes, I did.
I knew he wasn't guilty.
I was surprised. I thought he was going to be found guilty, but I'm glad it's over with and we can get on with living now.
I was surprised, but I think that even though the jury says he's innocent, he might be guilty. They just didn't prove that he was guilty, and we don't know.
A bit of a muffled cheer when the thing came up here, and we'll, of course, have more for you a little bit later on. Cynthia?
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. Of course, we'll have the latest at 5, 6, and 11. Now back to Los Angeles, where Gil Garcetti is holding a news conference.
Was fought as a battle for victims of domestic violence. We hope this verdict does not discourage victims who are out there throughout our communities, throughout this country, from seeking help. I know there are women especially who are right this very moment living in fear, living in violence. We're asking you to reach out for help. There is new help out there. Think of yourself. Think of the children who are in the house too. Don't wait. If you wait, it could be too late. We are, all of us, profoundly disappointed with the verdict. We want to hear from the jurors before we make any other comments concerning their decision today. But it was clear, at least it is to me, and I think other members of the prosecution team, that this was an emotional trial, and apparently their decision was based on emotion that overcame the reason. Certainly we have received calls and letters from all over the country praising the efforts of the prosecution. This was done no matter what verdict was going to be reached. We had many men and women throughout the country call and thank us for the efforts, many in tears. I am proud of every member of my staff. But there are particular people who made sacrifices. To the Goldmans and to the Browns, we cried with you. We shared energy, and as Chris said, during the most difficult times, we looked at you, and you gave us all strength, tremendous strength. We will never know the loss, really the pain of your loss. We tried as diligently, as hard, as professionally as we could to seek justice in this case. My thanks go to all the law enforcement agencies that assisted us. Los Angeles Police Department, obviously, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, Department of Justice. But I think most particularly, I still, myself as the district attorney, want to thank the two lead investigators in the case, Phil Van Adder and Tom Lang. Los Angeles should be grateful for the professional job and loyalty that they've given over several decades. There are a couple companies that gave pro bono services to us. Absolutely first class. Decision Quest assisted us with many things. Many of you saw the pyramid. That was their idea. They did all of this. They invested pro bono nearly $1 million, their own, to help us seek justice. Cognitech also helped us. There were many others who helped. We had restaurants and others who were helping with the staff. I want to thank, too, every member of my office. They helped us. They don't have their name out in front, but they helped us. And more importantly, they helped every day with all the Rons and all the Nicoles that we handle every day. This has been one case. It's been an important case. But literally, we have thousands of these cases. Finally, to our team, to our law clerks, who really worked so hard. These were students in law school who gave up so much to work with us. To the new prosecutors who joined our team, who took and passed the bar and became deputy DAs, and they gave their all. To the support staff from Patty Joe, to everyone else involved, our victim witness people, but certainly to the media relations. Special thanks to Suzanne Childs. Suzanne worked the 7 days a week. As you know, she's a lawyer, former deputy district attorney, as well as a journalist. She made your life, the journalists, easier, made our lives easier too. Our investigators, our Bureau of Investigation, goes unheralded, but they did fabulous work. Especially Gary Schramm and Mike Armstrong and several others. They were there whenever we needed them, whenever the families needed them. They were there. Finally, of course, we have the lawyers that you saw in court. Let me thank them because they did a first-class job. To Bill Hodgman, you know Bill, he managed the unmanageable, but he did it. To Alan Yokelson, to Sherry Lewis, to Hank Goldberg, to Brian Kelberg, to Lisa Kahn, to Rock Harmon, Woody Clark, and Scott Gordon. Every person here gave their all. It was a professional effort seeking justice. We had, I perhaps should give thanks to Woody and Rock's bosses, the district attorneys of San Diego and Alameda County. They helped when we needed to help, and again, it was a first-class effort. And of course, lastly, to Chris and to Marcia. None of you will ever know the personal sacrifices everyone here made. None of you will know, too, the sacrifices that the families of this team made. They didn't see their husbands or their wives, the fathers and their mothers, for 16 months. I think on behalf of every citizen who has been looking at this case in an objective way, I think they want me to say thank you. And I am saying thank you. And let me end by saying we deserve to be proud of the effort that we made in this case. I am very proud of the total effort made in this case. We stand here in front of you with our heads held high because we did everything professionally possible to seek the justice in this case. I'm going to ask Marcia and then Chris and then Bill if they want to make any comments or thank you. Now would be the appropriate time to do it. We will then, when they finish, address a few of your questions. But I will also add that because we've not had the opportunity to hear from the jury, they've indicated they're not interested in talking to any of the lawyers. Maybe they'll talk to you. We will withhold further comment for the rest of the day. But let me give Marcia an opportunity to say thanks.
I first want to extend my thanks to the families of the victims, to the Goldmans and to the Browns. Their strength, their dignity, and their support throughout this trial have been tremendous, and a tremendous source of inspiration and strength to all of us. My sympathy and my love go out to all of them. And then I'd like to thank the members of our team. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. You've given everything. You've given your all throughout all of it. We couldn't have done any of it without you. You've done a beautiful job. Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system. Please don't let this deter you from doing a job you're so well qualified to do. You're all wonderful. You can make it go right, and you'll have a chance to do it again. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I thank my partners, all of you. You're just fantastic. I can't tell you how fantastic. No one here has spared any effort. Everyone here has put in 110%, given their all for everyone, for justice, for the families of the victims, in the effort to see that the lives of Ron and Nicole were not thrown away. It was a dignified fight. It showed great courage, great integrity, great moral strength. And we have every reason to be proud of every single one of them, and we are. Thank you.
Chris. I never expected I would be here in this time and in this place and in this position. If there was anything that ever motivated me throughout the trial, it was the idea, the notion that one day I'd have to turn into the Goldmans and with the realization that he had been acquitted. But that is the verdict, that's the jury's position, that's their voice, and I accept that verdict. We came here in search of justice. You will have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it today. But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
And please give us a moment. I guess I've always been referred to as the calm one, but it is it's very difficult for any of us to speak without great emotion today. The verdict comes as a great disappointment, and I want to tell everyone here, I want to tell everyone in this county, and I want to tell everyone in this country that you can be proud to the hilt of the effort made by the prosecution team in this case. This was a classic team effort. None of us, take all the credit, and all of us share in the disappointing verdict today. I've been involved in a number of long or epic trials over time, and I have never seen anyone work so hard in behalf of the people as the team that we had in this case, and that goes from investigator to law clerk to stand-up attorney in the courtroom to research attorney. Every single person here on this team sacrificed greatly to try to bring the Browns and the Goldmans justice, and to bring justice to the county and for everyone. We won't forget Ron and Nicole. We won't forget them ever. And We may have to carry on the fight in their names in a different way after this. But for the Browns and the Goldmans, we're not going to give up. And for Ron and Nicole, we'll never forget you, ever. Thank you.
Let me, if I might, just to clear the record, too, I left out a couple thank yous. Daryl Mavis, thanks, Daryl. And certainly to my executive staff, my chief deputy, Sandy Buttigia, and Frank Sunstead, the entire staff. I mean, this truly was a team effort. And I said one last time before you take your questions, I've been in the office 27 years. I am extremely proud, and every citizen in this county, perhaps even this country, should be proud of the professional effort that was made. We'll take a few of your questions.
Is the Simpson matter over, or would you consider any possible federal charges, and are there any?
It's over from our viewpoint.
Garcetti, is this investigation now going to be reopened from square one, the whole murder investigation?
Are you talking about this case?
We're going to find the killer?
The lights just went out. I stand in front of you. We all stand in front of you with the belief that the evidence was there. This was not, in our opinion, a close case.
Gil, can we hear from Fred Goldman about whether or not he's determined...
The Goldmans are not going to be speaking.
You said apparently that this was a verdict based on emotion. I just wanted to see if you could elaborate on that.
I couldn't hear you.
You said that this was a verdict apparently based on emotion. Why do you believe that? With the swiftness at which it came in?
Well, we have less than 3 hours deliberation after, what, almost 9 months worth of evidence? I don't know. I said I haven't had the opportunity to discuss it with the jury, so I don't know.
You've done your best. You've had a huge amount of effort and time expended on this, and yet there are people out there in the streets all over Los Angeles cheering for O.J. Simpson. Why is that?
I'm not a psychologist. I can't answer that. I think you probably have more people who are profoundly disappointed with the result. Chris?
Is there one point in this trial that you think is a pivotal kind of turning point one way or another that is particularly the moment in the whole trial?
I don't think so. Is there? I mean...
Bill, this is to follow up on Kareem's question. Considering the swiftness of this verdict after 8 months of testimony, is this a legitimate verdict?
Is this a legitimate verdict? Call it whatever you want. It's the verdict. And I'm not going to put any adjective in front of the verdict. It's a verdict.
Do you think historians will look back on it and consider a nullification verdict?
Well, certainly there are going to be many people who look at this, that this was, in fact, jury nullification.
Gil, all along you said that you had a mountain of evidence. What does this tell you about justice?
Give us a chance to reflect. I mean, this is... I don't know how... if you can really appreciate the profound disappointment that we're all feeling. Had this been a close case, all right. But you have professionals up here. We're surrounded by professionals. Every person here has tried so many cases, difficult cases, and very thin cases, that we refer to them, where you don't know what the jury is going to do because it's very close in the way of evidence. In our professional judgment, it was overwhelming evidence. We still believe in the evidence in the case.
Given the reactions, different reactions within the city, how do you not lose faith in the system when you have so many people who feel one way about this and so many people feeling the other way?
Give me an opportunity to reflect on this before I'll take one more question.
The ugly truth really at this point, though, that this whole case did cut on race in the end.
Before I have an opportunity to hear what you learned from the jurors, I'm not going to respond to that. I mean, you have to understand that there is profound disappointment, but I have to admit to you that unlike Chris, I have a little anger too. And so I rather just be a little more reflective here before I do it.
Concerned at all that this kind of verdict, there are people out there who are not cheering as well. Do you think that this kind of verdict or this verdict will have some impact on people's faith in the system?
I didn't just fall off the back end of the turnip truck. And when you ask, are there people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system? Of course there are going to be people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system. But let me emphasize one thing. We've heard it time and again, but this case is not the usual case. Don't look at this case as being really how most cases are handled, or how most juries, or how most judges, or how most everyone who's involved in the process deal with the case. That's not the case. You know, the jurors do the right thing, you know, nearly all the time. That's it, folks. Thank you.
Wanting to talk to you. When do you think you can talk to them? Please.
I only have a few things to say. Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. Excuse me. I want to thank, on behalf of my family, of all decent, law-abiding citizens in this country and nation, Marcia Clark, Chris Darden, Bill Hodgman, Gil Garcetti, I'll forget names, I'm sorry, quick help. Everybody, every single person in this DA's office. Until the other day, I had, honest to God, no clue how many people in this office had worked day and night for a year toward one goal, and that's justice. And to each and every single one of them, our profound thank you and blessings. Not to forget Mark, our victim's advocate, backbone. This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served. I and my family will do everything in our power to bring about the kind of change that won't allow what happened today to ever happen to another family again. In closing, I only have one other thing to say, because I don't want to forget. I forget a lot of things. To my wife, Patty. To my daughter, Kim. To Michael and Lauren and Brian. My other kids. to all of our deep, close friends. Who have been there for us for this year and 4 months or 5 or whatever it's been. Who have helped us daily get through each day. We'll never be able to say thank you enough. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Terribly distraught Fred Goldman, who is the father of Ron Goldman and his family, saying this was a loss for the country today, that justice was not done. We saw Chris Darden saying that he was not bitter, not angry, but when he began to speak about the honor that he felt with working with the other lawyers, he broke down and had to leave the room. This has obviously been a long, draining, emotional ordeal for the prosecutors and for the family of the victims. For the district attorney, Gil Garcetti, who is serving his first term in this job, he has an enormous investment, obviously, in this case. It has been called the trial of the century. Barry Scheck, a member of the defense team, is here with me. You can understand the emotion of Mr. Goldman.
Oh, I feel terribly for this man.
Are there any winners in this case?
I don't know.
Do you think you can go back into the courtroom anytime soon, having been through this kind of an emotional, wrenching experience, even though you ended up on the winning side?
Well, I spent yesterday teaching, and I'm going to go back and do that. I'm sure these other lawyers will go on and try cases.
The American legal system is very resilient. Do you think it will be changed as a result of this ordeal?
Well, in some ways, I think we have to reflect upon a lot of things that I think will make a difference in the long run if we learn the lessons correctly about cameras in the courtroom, about how people should cover trials. I think that there's a tremendous amount to learn about the way criminalists operate, coroners operate, the way we handle forensic evidence. And there's a big lesson to be learned about the amount of resources that can be brought to bear to defend people in cases. I think that Jerry Ullman in the defense press conference was really pointing out something very important. Right now we face budget cuts in Congress on death penalty resource centers, on legal aid society, on public defenders across the country. And people should be asking that question. That's what I do, basically. I mean, provide resources to people that are representing indigents. That's been my life's work. And I think that the problem is that there are probably a lot of people that can't bring the resources to bear that we could in this case to expose a lot of the things that I think led to this not guilty verdict.
You did win. It was an exhausting experience. Will you be able to sleep well now for the next several nights?
No. Not so quickly.
Thank you for coming by, Barry.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more of NBC News special coverage, the verdict in the O.J. Simpson case, not guilty on all counts, right after this.